Caitlin Posick here doing my self-evaluation for the informative speech, the final, which is speech number 4. Sorry if this is distracting, but Kingsley got some new toys today and he just has not settled down, so he's playing with me currently while I take this video. So question number 1 was, there are the 2 major classifications of informative communications and the 4 functions, yada yada. I use the informative communication, obviously, to inform my audience. I mean, that's pretty much what this speech was about. Excuse me. And I also had the inform function nailed down by presenting information to my audience, comparing it to the information that the audience is coming with, which is basically what I talked about in my speech. The fact that we all know that King Tut was a young pharaoh. He was the youngest one. And that we obviously know he's a pharaoh of ancient Egypt, and he's probably the most famously talked about because his tomb is the most well preserved, and they have the most information about him due to like the depictions on the walls and the artifacts that are still in there. I mean, it has been raided actually 3 times, his tomb, so a lot of, like 60% of what was in there is gone, but they have the most information more than any other tomb. It was so well preserved, it wasn't collapsed or anything. So I think comparing that with the information that I gave them. Question 2, what type of attention-getting technique did you use? In previous speeches, I've always used statistics and facts to kind of like shove at the audience so that they're like, oh, okay, this is going to be what this is about. But for this one, I used the well-known person. I had the picture of King Tut, and I kind of said, you know, most of you guys know who this person is. If you don't, you know what he is, I guess. You know he is from Egypt, obviously, just by the picture and it's of his gold-plated casket that they actually sealed his body in. So yeah, I used him, and then that picture. Question 3, where in the speech did you establish your credibility and how did you do so? I established my credibility after my intro. I kind of just told them that I'm a freak and I have a weird obsession with ancient Egypt. I think that their lifestyle and everything that they have done is incredible and is so intricate and delicate and amazing. And I've actually done a lot of school projects on ancient Egypt and like the pharaohs and basically just everything that has to do with ancient Egypt and how they lived, their types of artwork, their clothing. Like, I've actually done a lot. I recently watched a 6-hour-long documentary about King Tut, and that's where I like grasped most of my knowledge of the like the common misconceptions. I was like, wow, like I had no idea this is what he had accomplished throughout his life. So from there, I obviously had to look up some outside additional sources just to make sure my facts were correct and I was using the right terminology in the right time periods and the right names, stuff like that. But that's pretty much where this came from. That was like over the summer, I think, and it was really, really interesting to me. Sorry. Question 4, where in your speech is your value step located? Specifically, what did you say? I said my value step is located in my conclusion. I kind of tell my audience now they can be the smartest one at the table over the holidays. I think it's kind of hard to like show what you're saying and how it's relevant to somebody's life, because obviously really what I'm saying isn't relevant to anybody who's, unless they're doing a presentation on King Tut or ancient Egypt or, you know, something along those lines. Some people could sit there and say, like, I don't really care, like, yeah, this is cool, but how is this going to help me? And I kind of was thinking, well, this happens to me, I don't know if it happens to you or, you know, anyone you know, but when you get together for the holidays, everyone has so many questions for you, and what have you learned, like, what are you doing in school, what's this, and I said that, they can talk about, you know, some of the stuff they learned, like, hey, did you know this happened? And, you know, how much do you know about King Tut? And kind of, like, explain from there what they learned from listening to my speech. Evaluate your effectiveness in applying the 3 insider secrets. I definitely use the KISS, the Keep It Simple speaker. I just kind of put everything in chronological order and almost told, like, a story of King Tut's life and what he's done. in his accomplishments. So everything went pretty smoothly and it flowed together, and I think that was definitely keeping it simple. I didn't put a lot of character names in there. Like, I just referred to his dad as his dad. I didn't say his, like, super weird and hard to pronounce name. And the same thing with his sister. Like, I shortened his name to King Tut, and I didn't do Tutankhamun, and stuff like that, I think, was definitely simple. I didn't want to have to keep saying his father's name 6 times, and people will be like, okay, like, we get it, his name is super hard to pronounce and understand, and get them confused or have them lose interest in what I was saying. And then I used a sensory image, obviously visual image of King Tut in the beginning, just the picture of him, or the gold-plated casket that he was entombed in. And then just the keeping the focus, I think I focused really well. The whole body of my speech was the informative part, like, kind of saying, like, these are his accomplishments, this is how he died, this is what people speculate, this is why he's the most famous pharaoh that we talk about today. And that's obviously my main purpose, Christmas shopping on the brain, purpose was to inform my audience about, some facts that they weren't aware of. I had to pick 2 types of reliable supporting information. I picked factual. Obviously, I couldn't just put random things in there. I definitely did a lot of fact-checking because I had remembered a lot and I retained a lot of information from the documentary I watched. It was kind of like a reenactment. They had actors, like, portray everything that happened. So I remembered a lot of that stuff, but I wanted to go and, like, check my facts and make sure that what I was saying was correct. And then I also used descriptions. Obviously, their relationships, certain people in the palace, their relationships, the descriptions of what happened, what he had done. And then I feel like I said before, I overall just kind of told a story on his life, and I think that was definitely beneficial to me in the long run. How did you prepare your audience for the conclusion? In my conclusion, I related back to the intro, so without that information from the intro, they would have no idea what I was talking about in that conclusion. So from the intro, I said, most of you guys will know who this is. If you don't, where he's from, the region, what he's done, like, what this figure means to this culture. So in the conclusion, I kind of related back to that and said, this is what you knew, and now you have more information, and I hope now you don't just say, oh yeah, King Tut, he was that 9-year-old king, like, thousands of years ago. Now like, wow, he actually did a lot in those 9 years as being king, in his teens, and dealing with all that, and now you kind of have an understanding of the importance and, like, kind of the astonishment of being 9 years old, 10 years old, actually, is when he started actually making decisions for himself at the throne. That's kind of, like, insane. If you were to think about Obama or the president being 10 years old, and actually being productive and doing things that the country needed. So I kind of relayed that back, and I wanted them to get a sense of the difference between what they came here knowing and then what they're leaving with. So without that introduction, they wouldn't have been able to understand my conclusion. What made the ending of your speech vivid and memorable? What are you doing? I think kind of like what I just said is that I hope that they can take something away and be the smartest person at their, their holiday dinners and holiday get-togethers this year. Everyone always wants something to talk about and have that, avoid that awkward conversation with your grandma or uncle you haven't seen all year, and they're always questioning your grades and stuff like that. Well, you can say, hey, I listened to this really cool speech about, King Tut. Do you know anything about ancient Egypt? Let me educate you. So that's kind of a memorable thing. I mean, I feel like everyone can remember those types of, I guess it's not advice really, but everyone can remember that type of ending when you're sitting there and you're like, oh, think back to this speech where they said specifically in this moment I could talk about this, so let me talk about this and what I learned. And I feel like that kind of would help my audience retain the information that they just learned, saying like, oh, okay, this is a good topic or a conversation starter or something to talk about on a rainy day. So I'm gonna think and I'm gonna dwell on this. Maybe even do some outside information on my own. So I think that it was definitely memorable. Get your toy out of here. Discuss and evaluate your delivery based upon the 8 through 9 grading criteria for this speech. What did you do that was effective? I think that, like I said a million times already, the putting it in chronological order was definitely effective. If it was all over the place and I started at his death and then went to his childhood and then went to his him as a ruler, like I don't think that would have made sense and it wouldn't have felt right for the audience. So that was definitely effective. What still needs work? I mean, I think that overall this semester my speeches have got like progressively better, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't using like good flowing techniques, and I think now everything kind of flows together. I definitely obviously still need work in some areas, excuse me. I definitely wouldn't feel comfortable like doing a speech in front of 400 people. And then I also looked at everything for the grading criteria. I thought that I always think that I have everything down, and then next thing I know, I don't have everything. But I thought that I had everything in my outline. I checked everything, did my outline, and then checked and then referred back to my outline and made sure that everything was adding up and that, my topic was right on for the project, stuff like that, that I was making sure it was interesting and having that point. They kind of had to get creative there with the whole like holiday stuff like that, getting together with your family. But yeah, I think I think I had everything that I needed for this project, and it is the final. It's 150 points, so I tried to do the best job I could. So yeah, that is my evaluation. Here's Kingsley saying goodbye.